The Empire's arrogance. The Zyrek Galactic Empire had conquered thousands of worlds without resistance worth mentioning. Their soldiers, bioengineered for war and equipped with the most advanced weapons in the galaxy, had crushed every civilization they encountered. When their fleets arrived in orbit above Earth, they expected another swift, bloodless victory. Grand Marshal Zivor, a towering Zyrek commander with violet-hued skin and piercing yellow eyes, stood aboard the ISS Valkyries, the Empire's flagship, watching the planet below. The holographic display showed images of Earth soldiers, men and women in primitive armor, wielding projectile weapons. The Zyrek officers surrounding Zivor chuckled. "These creatures call themselves warriors?" One of them sneered. "Our shock troops will cut through them like blades through mist," another added. Zivor was unimpressed. The data reports suggested Earth had developed nuclear weapons and rudimentary space travel, but nothing that posed a real threat. Even their so-called elite soldiers were a joke by galactic standards. The Empire's best operatives had neural-linked reflexes, combat exosuits, and energy weapons that could turn flesh to ash in an instant. "Deploy a small strike force," Zivor ordered. "Let them see what true warriors look like." First contact. The Zyrek deployed across multiple continents, striking at key military installations. The battles weren't battles at all. They were exterminations. In London, a detachment of Zyrek soldiers stormed a British military base. Within minutes, the defenders were dead, captured, or retreating. The Zyrek war machine moved methodically, rounding up Earth's best soldiers for study, eager to understand how such an inferior species had survived for so long. Among the captured was Captain Callum Cal Hayes, a veteran of the British Special Air Service, SAS. He had fought in conflicts across the world, but nothing had prepared him for this. These weren't just enemy soldiers, they were something else entirely. As he was dragged aboard the Zyrek warship, Cal kept his head down, feigning compliance. He had observed their movement patterns, their armor layouts, even their overconfidence. They saw humans as weak. That was their first mistake. Mocking the primitive, Cal was placed in a cold, sterile interrogation room deep within the ISS Valkyries. The Zyrek officer assigned to him, Commander Ryvok, entered with a smirk. Like all Zyrek, he stood well over 7 feet tall, his physique enhanced by genetic modifications. He tapped at a hollow screen, bringing up footage of Earth soldiers engaging Zyrek forces and failing miserably. "You call yourselves Special Forces," Ryvok said in accented English, voice dripping with amusement. "Yet your weapons are obsolete, your tactics laughable." Cal sat in silence, his hands bound behind his back. He had been trained to endure far worse than enemy taunts. "You are fortunate," Ryvok continued, pacing around the room. "The Grand Marshal has ordered your kind be studied, not exterminated. Yet." He leaned in closer. "Tell me, what do you hope to achieve against the Zyrek Empire?" Cal met his gaze with a calm, unwavering stare. "Wouldn't you like to find out?" Ryvok laughed, turning back to the hologram. "You are a novelty, nothing more. A relic of a species that doesn't understand its place in the universe." He gestured at the screen, showing a Zyrek soldier effortlessly lifting a human marine by the throat before snapping his neck. "This is the fate of your people. Your resistance is meaningless." Cal didn't flinch. He had studied this commander's movements, his arrogance. He had already found a weakness. Ryvok sighed, stepping toward the door. "Enjoy your final moments, primitive. Soon, you'll beg for the mercy of the Zyrek." As the door closed behind him, Cal exhaled slowly. The Zyrek thought they had captured an animal. They had no idea they had just locked themselves in a cage with a predator. The hunt begins. Left alone in the sterile interrogation room, Cal flexed his wrists against the restraints. They were made from an alien alloy, too strong for brute force. But strength wasn't the only way out of a trap. A hidden ceramic razor, woven into the lining of his uniform, slipped into his palm. It wasn't much, but in the hands of an SAS operative, it was all he needed. With careful precision, he sliced through the bindings, keeping his breathing steady. Step 1. Escape. Step 2. Make them regret everything. He moved to the door, listening for guard rotations. Every military force, no matter how advanced, had patterns. Predictability. A faint hum in the walls told him everything he needed. Power conduits nearby, security systems running on a closed network, a ventilation system large enough for maneuvering. The Zyrek had underestimated humanity. That would be their undoing. Cal grinned to himself. Let's see how good your warriors really are. One man, one war. Escape begins. The sterile hum of the ship's systems was the only sound as Captain Callum Hayes crouched near the door, his hands free, his mind calculating. The Zyrek had underestimated him. That was their second mistake. He pressed himself against the cool metal wall, waiting. The Zyrek guards rotated their shifts every 7 minutes, a detail he'd memorized while being dragged through the corridors. Predictability was a weakness. A heavy metallic clunk echoed from outside. Right on time. A single guard stepped through the door, armored in the standard Zyrek combat exosuit, his plasma rifle held lazily at his side. He expected a docile prisoner. Cal exploded into motion. With SAS-trained efficiency, he lunged low, striking the alien's knee joint with brutal precision. The Zyrek grunted in surprise as his leg buckled. Before he could react, Cal drove the stolen ceramic razor into his throat, cutting deep. The guard gurgled, hands scrambling at his bleeding neck. Cal grabbed the plasma rifle before the body hit the ground. Step 1. Escape. Done. He quickly stripped the guard's gear, taking a wrist communicator and a combat blade. Primitive by Zyrek standards, but perfect for what he had in mind. The rifle was heavier than an earth weapon, but firearms were firearms. Point, shoot, kill. Moving to the doorway, he glanced left, then right. The corridor was empty, but not for long. He needed a plan. Guerrilla warfare, SAS style. The Zyrek had the advantage in numbers, technology, and firepower. But Cal had the advantage of surprise. They weren't hunting an army. They were hunting him, a single soldier trained for asymmetric warfare. That meant they had already lost. He moved fast, staying in blind spots, using maintenance tunnels and access hatches. The Zyrek security relied on biometric scans and coded entry, but they had made an overconfident mistake. They assumed their soldiers would always be in control of their own technology. Cal used the stolen wrist communicator, accessing security logs, door controls, and patrol schedules. Their system was alien but intuitive. After all, Zyrek warriors weren't expected to think, only obey. Step 2. Sabotage. He identified a power junction near the ship's barracks. If he could overload it, it would plunge key sections into darkness, forcing the Zyrek to rely on emergency lighting. That would give him the cover he needed. Reaching the panel, he used the combat blade to pry it open. A mess of glowing cables greeted him. Electric blue. That meant power. Red meant security. Green meant life support. He didn't touch the green. He wasn't here to suffocate. He was here to kill. Using the guard's plasma rifle, he fired a short, controlled burst into the blue wiring. The lights flickered, then died. Klaxons blared across the ship. Time to hunt. The Empire panics. Commander Rivok stared at the flickering hollow screens in disbelief. "The prisoner is loose?" he snarled. The bridge officer scrambled. "He's in the lower decks, sir. He's killed 3 guards already." Rivok bared his fangs. How? How could one primitive soldier be causing this much damage? "Seal off the barracks," he snapped. "Deploy the shock troopers. I want him dead." But deep down, he felt something unsettling. Fear. The predator stalks. Cal navigated the darkened corridors with precision, avoiding the stomping boots of elite Zyrek shock troops. They moved in heavy armor, relying on helmet scanners to detect movement. He took advantage of that. Tossing a stolen plasma cell down the hallway, he waited. When a lead Zyrek turned toward the noise, Cal struck from behind. A knife to the throat. A rifle yanked away. A second shot to the chest. 2 more fell in seconds. Silent. Efficient. Dead. The others panicked, firing wildly into the darkness. But Cal was already gone. He moved with deadly patience, picking them off one by one, using their own weapons, their own arrogance against them. The Zyrek weren't hunters anymore. They were prey. Turning the tables, Cal accessed another security panel, this time hijacking the ship's internal comms. A grainy image of his face flickered onto every screen aboard the ISS Valkyries. He smirked. "Thought we were weak, did you?" His voice echoed across the ship. "You thought Earth was yours for the taking. Bad call." In the command center, Grand Marshal Zyrek turned slowly, his face unreadable. The bridge officers stared at the screen in shock. "I'm not locked in here with you," Cal continued, gripping his plasma rifle. "You're locked in here with me." The cost of arrogance. The Empire's response. Alarms howled across the ISS Valkyries as Zyrek troops scrambled to contain the chaos. One man, one human, and yet he had already killed over a dozen of their warriors, sabotaged their systems, and hijacked their communications. Grand Marshal Zyrek stood at the command deck, his yellow eyes burning with anger. "Seal every corridor. Gas the lower decks if you have to. I want that human found and eliminated." Commander Rivak hesitated. "Sir, our own soldiers are in those areas." Zyrek turned on him. "Then they'd better kill him first." Rivak swallowed his protest and relayed the orders. Across the ship, Zyrek soldiers locked down bulkheads, cutting off possible escape routes. Automated turrets deployed from the walls, scanning for movement. They thought it would contain him. They were wrong. Adapting to the battlefield, Cal was already on the move. He had studied the ship's layout from the security panels he accessed earlier. The Zyrek had created a fortress of steel and technology, but fortresses had weaknesses. With a stolen Zyrek combat blade, he pried open an access panel and climbed into the ventilation shafts before the lockdown fully engaged. The tunnels were tight, but they gave him something the Zyrek lacked: mobility. As he crawled forward, his earpiece picked up distorted chatter from enemy squads. "The human is on deck 12. Negative movement on deck 9. We need reinforcements. He's using the shadows." Panic. They were breaking. Cal smiled. They were an empire of war, but they had never fought like this. They had never fought someone like him. The trap is set. Cal reached his destination, a power conduit hub controlling several sections of the ship. He couldn't destroy the entire warship, but he could make it bleed. Using a stolen plasma detonator, he rigged the junction. A second later, the ship lurched violently, lights flickering as power surged uncontrollably. Across the vessel, blast doors malfunctioned, turrets misfired, Zyrek warriors were cut off from each other. Then, using the risk communicator he had taken, Cal spoke once more. "How's that superiority complex working out for you?" He heard Rivak snarl over the comms before he cut the feed. They were coming for him. That was the plan. Close quarters combat. The Zyrek warriors stormed the corridor outside the power hub, their boots pounding against metal. Their leader, a high-ranking shock trooper, stepped forward, his voice amplified by his helmet. "Primitive, you are surrounded." Cal crouched behind a control console, tightened his grip on the plasma rifle. They thought this was an execution. They were walking into an ambush. He aimed high, shooting out the ceiling lights. Darkness swallowed the corridor. The Zyrek hesitated for half a second. That was all he needed. Cal moved like a phantom, silent, precise. He fired controlled bursts, his shots striking helmet joints, armor gaps, weak spots. 1, 2, 3. Zyrek bodies hit the floor, their superior reflexes useless when they couldn't see their enemy. A warrior lunged with a plasma blade. Cal sidestepped, caught the alien's arm, and drove his knife under the chin plate, ripping through soft tissue. 4. Another raised a rifle. Too slow. Cal grabbed a fallen plasma grenade, yanked the activator, and tossed it straight into the Zyrek's chest cavity. 5. The explosion painted the walls with violet blood. The last soldier turned to run. Cal shot him in the back. 6. He exhaled slowly. His heart pounded, his muscles ached, but he was still standing. They weren't. The turning point. On the command deck, Zyrek watched the carnage in silence. He had laughed at Earth's warriors, mocked their tactics. Now his elite soldiers lay dead, their armor shattered, their blood pooling in their own corridors. Commander Rivak, now visibly shaken, turned to him. "Sir, we need to regroup. This human, he's unlike the others. Zyvor's hands clenched into fists. Enough. He opened a direct line to every soldier aboard the ship. This is your Grand Marshal. The human has embarrassed the Zyrek Empire for the last time. I am ordering full eradication protocols. The ship's internal defenses roared to life. Turrets, gas dispensers, and pulse fields activated, turning the corridors into a death trap. But Cal was already one step ahead. He had stolen the access codes earlier. As Zyvor's orders went out, Cal issued his own override. The systems shut down. Every Zyrek soldier froze. Then Cal's voice echoed across the ship one final time. You thought I was fighting to escape? A pause. I'm fighting to win. The hunter becomes the hunted. Turning the tide. Silence fell across the ISS Valkyries. For the first time in the ship's history, an enemy had seized control from within. Captain Cal Hayes stood in a darkened maintenance corridor, gripping his stolen plasma rifle, his breath steady despite the exhaustion settling into his limbs. The battle wasn't over, but the war had shifted. On the command deck, Grand Marshal Zyvor stared at the darkened security monitors, his yellow eyes narrowed. The human had overridden their defenses, outmaneuvered an entire warship's security forces, and turned their own systems against them. Zyvor clenched his fists. Enough games. He turned to Commander Ryvok, his voice like cold steel. Prepare my personal guard. I will kill the human myself. Cal's final play. Cal had no delusions. He couldn't fight the entire ship forever. Reinforcements would come, and eventually, numbers would overwhelm him. He needed an exit, and he had just the plan. Using the stolen wrist communicator, he accessed the ship's schematics again. There, the main hangar bay. It housed multiple Zyrek dropships, one of which would be his ticket home. But getting there wouldn't be easy. Through the security feeds, he saw Zyvor's personal guard mobilizing. Unlike the rank-and-file soldiers, these warriors were battle-hardened, ruthless killers. Cal didn't fear them, but he respected them. He checked his weapon. Half charge left. His knife was still sharp, and he had one last trick up his sleeve. The Grand Marshal enters the arena. The hangar was a vast, cavernous space filled with Zyrek dropships and rows of supply crates. Cal moved like a shadow, ducking behind cover as Zyvor's guards spread out, their weapons sweeping the area. Then, from the far entrance, Grand Marshal Zyvor himself strode in. The towering Zyrek leader wore an ornate battle harness, energy pulsating along its seams. His plasma blade ignited, a long, curved weapon humming with deadly power. Zyvor's voice echoed across the hangar. You have proven yourself more than I expected, human. Cal stayed silent, watching, waiting. Zyvor smirked. But this ends here. No more hiding. He raised a hand. The doors sealed shut. No escape. Cal took a slow breath. Fine. If he couldn't run, he'd finish this the old-fashioned way. The final battle. The first Zyrek elite came at him fast, too fast. Cal rolled sideways, dodging a plasma shot and firing mid-motion. The bolt slammed into the alien's visor, melting through bone. One down. A second warrior lunged, swinging a plasma-forged axe. Cal ducked low, feeling the heat scorch past his head. He jammed his knife into the enemy's armpit, where armor was weakest, and twisted hard. The Zyrek choked on his own blood. Two down. A third and fourth opened fire. Cal dove behind a crate, feeling a shot scorch his shoulder. He gritted his teeth against the pain and lobbed a stolen plasma grenade. A thunderous explosion rocked the hangar. For down. Now it was just Zyvor. The Grand Marshal moved like lightning, closing the distance before Cal could react. Their weapons clashed, blade against blade. Zyvor was faster, stronger. He drove Cal back, slashing with precise, brutal efficiency. Cal barely dodged the final strike, but Zyvor's fist caught him in the ribs, sending him sprawling across the floor. Pain exploded through Cal's body. His vision blurred. The fight was slipping away. Zyvor loomed over him. You are skilled, human, but skill is nothing against power. He raised his plasma blade for the kill. Cal smirked. You talk too much. He reached for his belt, where he had planted a second plasma grenade. Zyvor's eyes widened. Cal activated it. Boom. The explosion hurled them both apart. Cal hit the ground hard, pain lancing through his side, but he forced himself up. Zivor, however, was struggling. His armor was shattered, his body smoking from the blast. Cal didn't hesitate. He raised his plasma rifle and fired 3 shots. One to the knee, one to the chest, one between the eyes. The Grand Marshal of the Zyrek Empire crumpled to the floor, dead. The fight was over. Escape and a message. Cal didn't waste time. He staggered toward a Zyrek dropship, activating the controls. The hangar doors opened to the blackness of space. As he powered up the ship, a final message flashed across the Zyrek communications network. A single image, Zyvor's corpse, and then Cal's voice. Earth is not weak. Come again, and we'll bury you. The dropship blasted off, heading for Earth. Humanity had been underestimated. Now, the galaxy would never make that mistake again.